And we are back. And we've got Charles Frith on the line with us. And Charles, you've got a fan or something going on in the background there, hun. There it is. Much better. Much better. I wanted to introduce everybody to Charles Frith. I've been, like I told him a few minutes ago, I've been stalking him on Twitter, on Facebook, and because he has got key information. And when he pursues something and starts tweeting it or posting it on Facebook, he's pretty much researched it. And not too often do I have to say, I think that's disinfo, bro, that kind of thing. Not too often, but when I do, he's one of the few that says, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, pull it, kind of like what I had to do this morning about, the journalist. At any rate, how is it over there it's morning for you, isn't it? Early.
Yeah, I went to bed early last night knowing I'd be getting up at 5 for this interview, and I woke up about 2:30 in the morning. It was just terrible.
Poor thing. I've had those types of days before. Yes, I've had those types of days before, and I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I feel fine. I'm on my second cup of coffee.
Coffee is the fuel for planet Earth. And for those of us who think
it's the fuel. It's the fuel for the Federal Reserve.
Shush! Don't make it a Federal Reserve. Oh no, man!
Don't remind people we're on a plantation.
I know, right? And that's something that I want to talk to you about. Like we were saying during the break, I started following you while Stanley Cohen was in jail, and you had his face or his picture as your avatar on Twitter. Tell everybody who Stanley Cohen was and why he was in jail.
He's a lawyer. He's a Jewish lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And he got set up by the Inland Revenue for being a great lawyer and a great activist for Palestinian rights. And so while he was in jail, I had his Twitter avatar, or the picture of him as my avatar. And also I wrote to the jail, and I wrote to the governor, and I said, look, you don't know me, I don't know you, but Stanley Cohen is a really good guy, and he's really respected by a lot of people I know, and he's actually what I would call a great American, person who stands up for the downtrodden and for the bombed and for the exploited, and I really hope you consider this when releasing him. And anyway, subsequently he was released, so hopefully that contributed towards his freedom.
I think it did. He was very thankful to everybody who supported him. I recall that when he was released. Tell me your thoughts on Mordecai Vanunu.
Yeah, Mordecai's he was the whistleblower for the nuclear program in Israel, and it's almost one of the sort of like, oh yeah, Israel's got nukes, but I remember raising Israel's nukes sometime in about 2000 and let me think now, about 2003, and people flipping out and calling it anti-Semitic. It was like making up conspiracy theories. Well, slowly but surely that information's come out, and if anybody wants to explore that subject. I think Seymour Hersh has written a book called Samson Option, which is basically the Zionist threat to the rest of the world, that if Israel no longer exists in its expansionary form, then they will nuke anyone and everyone, and they'd rather go down themselves as well. And that's sometimes I wonder, is that the national security threat? Why everybody has to defer to Israel? It's like a North Korea basically in the civilized world. And, I say North Korea, but I actually 100% believe that all of that North Korean stuff, that's just baloney. I mean, it has that pantomime quality to it.
Yes, it does.
Kim Jong-il has boiled his dogs alive along with his uncle. It's like, come on, guys, that just sounds like, MI6 guys having a laugh. Because basically they write shit that a lot of people believe.
Yeah, yes. Yes, indeed. And the thing that gets me about the North Korea thing, because they're pursuing this, they're pursuing that, and the big bug. We always have to have a new bugbear in our horizon, always. And now we're recycling. I think we've run out of bugbears, and we're recycling back to Russia again.
Oh, I just want the alien invasion to happen because, like, you know what, that would be kind of cool.
Right. Who knows? I was thinking if we did have an alien invasion, I think that the people of the world would be like, wait a minute, enough of the wars with each other. We got to watch out for this guy that's coming up now. And
a few years back, I remember listening to someone describe that if aliens were discovered on Earth or something, like, obviously 80% of the population would, be completely polarized over some issue or whatever, but 20% would be like, oh, really? And carry on with their work,
Right. Indeed. Now, something that you told me was an elegant British operation, the intelligence work in regards to the hacks in America on our election systems. Wasn't it?
I don't recall that specific.
What was that? Wait a minute now, because we cover a lot of things in a whole broad spectrum of things.
Well, I mean, any hack, everyone's hacking each other. That's the point. I mean, that's their job. But if we look at the actual specifics of these people hacked our election, the idea that the Russians did it, well, basically the Russians have got all the dirt on all of us. Our political classes are completely venal, bankrupt, and corrupt, right? They're child raping Satanists in one quarter, and they're just greedy little dirty, grubby fingers in the other corner. So, like, the Russians have got all that information. If you look at Cathy O'Brien's books, now I know she's a mind control subject, so her information is questionable, and it's good to question stuff. But one of the things that Mark, her handler, ex-CIA handler, says is that the Chinese told him exactly how it all worked. So look, let's be honest, right? The Chinese, the Russians, anyone who's of any importance has all the dirt on our political classes, and in a way, I think that they're owned as well. Look, let's be honest. The Russians, okay. They didn't. They dropped out of the moon race. Well, what kind of country goes, oh, you know what? We're just going to quit now. We've given up. No, of course not. They're all in it together at some level. I'm not saying at all levels, but at some level, there has to be some kind of controlling mechanism that says, you know what? We can't spill the beans on this because then we all go down. Right.
And I think that's what's happening now is everybody's starting to see all this. That which you've mentioned, and all the ties between different agencies, different countries, and different parties, and starting to see that it's all tied together with something even higher up that the names of which we don't know, have never heard of, probably. And so now people are starting to realize this, and you're like, wait a minute, the gig's up. What's going on here? And that's what I love about being alive in this time, is because we can all talk to each other. I mean, you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah, I'm in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And that's just, yay. And we're on the air live, and you're talking to people in Tennessee and in Arizona. You're talking to people in Michigan and North Carolina. Of course, Star is on here with us. And this is just a wonderful, and Canada. Yes, of course, your honey is in Canada. So
another way of thinking of it is this is telepathy. I'm communicating my thoughts. I'm on my own, okay, in my place in Hong Kong, and I'm telepathically communicating with you and your listeners. And is it Luckee or Honey in Canada? You're Lucky, she's Honey.
Oh,
Lucky Honey. Can I have some of that Lucky Honey?
Star's Honey is in Canada. Her
sweetheart.
Star's Honey. Star's Honey is in Canada. Yeah, and we're going to talk about love again. Yeah, she's in North Carolina, just east of me, and that's cool too.
Getting back to that point now, which is that it's a classic programming point, which is that we're taught that the apocalypse is a bad thing. It's the apocalypse coming and whatever. Well, no, the apocalypse is Greek for the unveiling. All secrets will manifest and become visible. And so we are living in a wonderful age called the apocalypse, the unveiling. And it's all coming to the surface now. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago listening to, do you remember George Kavasilas?
Yes, of course. Yes. We've had him on CFR.
Yeah. So a lot of his stuff is like, come on, dude, I want to know more. Where's, what exactly happened here? But I never got that chance to talk to him. But one of the things that he would be saying about this changing time, which I think he said was 2012, but it's an ongoing process. It's not a light switch, right?
Right.
Is that he was going to be sitting down and eating the popcorn and watching the infighting going on, and that's exactly how I'm enjoying it now. Oh look, they're all at each other's throats. I mean, even Trump's win, which actually I sort of enjoyed because I just know how venal the Clintons are. They're a gang and they're tight as anything with the Bushes. But seeing them all fighting each other, including Trump getting his throat bitten by the media, it's like, yeah, go for it, guys. Knock yourselves out.
Indeed. Now, I have to talk about your blog. You go everywhere that it's uncomfortable. Wherever there is some discomfort, that's where you're going to dive into.
Yeah, not because I want to be honest, but I just feel obliged to. It's because it gets me into trouble. But I covered some of the difficult subjects. I think the two most difficult ones are the institutionalized child abuse networks, because it is institutionalized. I mean, they're literally taking children from parents and putting them into the system, and those children are the most vulnerable to predators in the system.
Exactly.
And the other one, of course, is Zionism. But I would go a little bit further than that and say, you know what, it's, the central mythology of our time is the Holocaust, which is that, of course, Jews died, and that's absolutely wrong. In fact, anyone dying is wrong, along with homosexuals, socialists and gypsies and anyone. But the story that we're told is the Hollywood movie. The reality is a lot less traumatic than, say, the Khmer Rouge genocide, which we sponsored in Cambodia. Right. It's got nothing on the genocide in the Congo, which was in the last 10 to 15, or the last 20 years, and that was that's around 6 million, if not more. And that's people that, that the Israelis were sort of pumping weapons into those countries as well. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so those are the two difficult ones, I suppose. Anything else is just like, well, he's mad, isn't he? Because, I happen to think that NASA is pumping out an awful lot of nonsense.
Well, my favorite post that you ever did was the staged ISIS slitting the throat of the dude. Okay, stage setup.
That's my banner.
Yes, and that was my favorite. It really was, and it will always be on my mind about how you pursue the truth, because that was from McCain's assistant's video phone, wasn't it?
Right. So McCain had an assistant who was traveling around, and the Russians hacked his lap. This is the story, but it seems to be a credible story, because veterans today who generally do sort of reasonable work, although they went sort of like, let's hate Trump, but, what does that mean? What, vote for Hillary Clinton? Come on, guys.
Right. Really?
So they claim that this assistant or aide to McCain had his laptop hacked, and on it was a video of the studio production of the beheadings. Now, did beheadings happen? Sure, I saw some really nasty ones, but those were our al-Nusra guys in Syria, but beheading their way through the multi-faith secular country of Syria, which we've absolutely destroyed. And it still bugs me when people say stuff like, I don't like, Assad, but it's like, no. Actually, Assad is a guy that, inherited a country which was built by empire, or constructed along empire lines, the Sykes-Picot lines, okay? So he was dealing with a bad hand anyway, and in the big picture of things, was a fantastic leader. His father, quite a strong man, a brutal man, but compared to the genocide that we've unleashed in Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Yemen. Yemen, we're getting the Saudis to do.
God.
They're our business partners in that one.
Oh, that's horrible. What's going on in Yemen? And nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. They've swept it. Oh, can't see, can't hear, can't, no, not looking, blah, blah, blah. And we have slaughtered millions. Oh. We have slaughtered millions and let loose this virus of a radical, I hate to use that word because it sounds so much like the conservative.
No, but it's right.
Neocon,
it is right. It's radical Islam, and Islam's got to stand up and say, you know what, we're not doing a good enough job to distance. Not distance. Say this is nothing to do. Your average Muslim, right, is just like your average Christian, a complete hypocrite. All right, so but I guess I can't swear on America.
Please don't.
Yeah, right. So the average Muslim is like your average Christian and your average Jew. They're complete hypocrites, right? And so they're just not that invested in what's going on on the fringes of their religion. But if there's one religion that seems to be very easy to manipulate, right, it's got to be the one where you have to get down on your knees 5 times a day and do what you're told. And so, if you're raised with that kind of psychology, then if you slip in and you have to behead the non-believers, well, you know what? Any kid can be trained to do anything, and when they can't be trained, well, nobody wants to talk about the mind control subjects. A lot of people are starting to think that the suicide bombers are all just MK Ultras. I mean, that would make perfect sense, wouldn't it?
It would, indeed. And doesn't mean that they have to be properly trained in MK Ultra or the trainers are properly trained in what the CIA was doing. It can be done to any child by any person if they just know how to do it. It's like building a house. You can build a structure. Sorry for using the house analogy there, but there it is. You can build a house. It doesn't mean it's a glorious mansion like the CIA or Russian version of MK Ultra, but it's still a functional house. And so you can have a functional MK Ultra victim doing the deeds.
Well, it works in 2 ways, doesn't it? One, they get the kids in the mosques, right? In the what's the name of the educational mosques? I forgot the name. But all of those are paid for by our CIA Turkish guy, Fethullah Gulen, who's a billionaire that sponsors all the madrasas around the Middle East, along with the Saudis, right? So if you get the kids in those, right, and you cover up the women and you say this is life, and by the way, you've got to go out and kill the infidel. Then they're done already. They're by the time they're 8 or 9, they are completely fully programmed. They know no other reality. So those guys are ready to roll. But those are your deployed troops, right? Oh, we want to send these guys into this country and blow it up. Then alongside that, you want to supplement another program that says, you know what, it'd be really nice. It'd be really nice if we had, a few sleeper cells, or if we had a few mind control subjects in different institutions, in the military, in the police, in the whatever. Okay, and then when the time comes to activate them, well, they can supplement our because it's quite a high death toll for it's all a high death toll, isn't it? Really, but anyway, that's how it works. I mean, I don't know if you've been following that George Webb guy recently.
I have seen some of his work.
I mean, his work is absolutely essential at the moment for anyone who's wants to really start dismantling this empire mechanism. So what he's saying is he's been making these videos that say, day 52, where is Eric Braverman, the CEO of the Clinton Foundation? Yep. Days 53, So he's been making all these videos. At first, it was just 500 to 1,000 viewers. And I was thinking, oh, God, this guy's really leaking some stuff. Now it's up to about 5,000. He's been on Rents and a couple of other radio shows.
I want him to get on here. I would love to get him on this show because
you should reach out to him because
Max Egan just told us to do the same thing on Tuesday. He says he's following George Webb also, and I haven't been following him as diligently as I should, and I think I should. I'm hoping Trump is following him.
As I understand it, the Trump people are keeping an eye on George Webb's, because the thing about Trump was that he might not send email, but he was definitely surfing the net for conspiracies and thinking, I think I'm getting some vital open source intelligence here.
Yes, he.
Anyway, the thing about George Webb is that he's dropping an awful lot of knowledge bombs in his 10-minute videos. So he's naming names, he's piecing it together. The funds are going from here, the pipeline's going there, the beheaders going in first, the Stinger missiles go from here to here, and it's all Clinton, all the cronies. But it's the Clinton-Bush crime axis. They're like, no need to blame any one particular family. We can rope them in two. But one thing that he came out with, because he doesn't actually say everything everything that he knows. He's ex-Intel, right? But he did admit the other day, he said that he thought that when the Israelis were bombing the Lebanese camps, okay,
yes,
or using the militias to behead their way through the camps. Well, one Intel guy, Steve Pichenik, right, went in. They managed to rescue some babies, right, and those babies probably were airlifted because he's a nice guy. He's trying to be a nice guy, Steve Pichenik. I'm not saying he's not. You can't be a nice guy in the Intel business. You have to make some nasty decisions. And that's even if you're just trying to do a good job. If you're trying to do a bad job, it's all nasty. But he suggests that Steve Pichenik airlifted out a bunch of babies from the Lebanese camps, and they were raised in Jewish homes. So it's the irony. This is why I got onto the subject of the sleeper sort of identity, which is, well, now you've got this kid who's been raised all his life thinking that that's his family, and and he makes it to the top of the Clinton Foundation and decides, you know what, this is about arms, child trafficking, money, pipelines, and dealing with despots. And we haven't heard from him now for about 81 or 82 days. And he could be a kid from, one of those camps where the Falangist militias were being used by the Israelis to,
Oh, wow. I had missed that part of it.
Yeah.
I had missed that whole part, that segment of it altogether. Wow. He's going everywhere. He's not, I don't know how anybody could believe that he's holding back with all the information that he's got and all the ties that he's showing. He really illustrates this stuff very well. And now I want to touch on that Fulin, the Gulen, yeah, him. And yes, I do know that he lives in America, folks. He does. Now, I've said recently that there's a lot of the blame for the Turkish coup being put on him. I think that Erdogan, this is my thoughts on this, Erdogan has been trying to get his caliphate or his sultanate up. He's been building those palaces. His daughter owns the hospital where Serena Shim died. His son owns the shipping cargo lanes or the ships for the oil that was sold to guess who that came through from ISIS stealing the oil. Okay, so Gulen has his blame that's assigned to him, but I do honestly believe that Erdogan is a key. He's a key betrayer, and that he's trying his own thing, and people are trying to just sidestep that altogether. I'm like, no, because look at who's starting to die. The Kurds. Who are the Kurds fighting? The Kurds are fighting ISIS. And the women of the Kurdish women in Turkey, they have the right to keep their faces open and on display. They're picking up arms and fighting. So, and I think it's funny that all these different nations, the leaders of these nations, in every case it seems are hurting the Kurds within their own countries.
Well, okay, so first of all, they're all in it together, okay? The Turks, the NATO, the Israelis, and to some extent the Russians, and on some aspects. The Kurds, right, have a unique situation because they're sort of like a large population spread across 3 countries, right? So it's Turkey, Iraq, and I suppose Syria.
Yes.
And so really, if they're going to have their own state, okay, which is what everybody wanted to exploit, let's break up Syria and give a chunk of it to the Kurds, and that way we separate the problem of the Turkish and Kurd conflict, okay? But the reality is the Kurds, that stuff about the Kurdish fighters, the women, bravely, those lovely babes going into battle.
Yeah, I know that.
That's MI6 propaganda, okay? Which is like, yes, that does happen because they have got passionate women that want to fight for them, but that's a photo op, right? To say these are the guys that we should be supporting, right?
Yeah, marketing.
Yeah, it's marketing. So, we should be supporting them in some ways, but let's be honest, right? The Kurds will cut a deal with anyone to establish their state. It's only natural. So, Sibel Ebbins has talked at length about the Israeli operatives that work deep inside the Kurdish community across all 3 states. But anyway, it's a shit sandwich. everyone's involved, aren't they?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And And that's the thing that gets me about this sandwich, as you put it. Everybody's forced to take a bite.
That's right, the sarnie. Here,
yeah.
try one of my sarnies.
Right. But now here's my question, because I see that you get accused of being a Trumpite on Facebook, and I'm sitting here like, you guys don't get this guy, do you? You don't really get it. He's not a Trumpite. He's just pointing out the hypocrisy of all these different organizations. Because
I get accused of everything, and you know what? That's the only independent thinkers are accused of everything. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a good sign. When everyone's having a go at me, I don't like it, but it's like, well, I'm doing my job then, because you know, I don't follow anybody. You know who I'm following? Me. Right. I'm trying to figure out my journey, my place in this reality framework, which generally speaking seems to be completely detached from sort of facts and documentation. But you know, so yeah, I do get accused of being a Trumpite. I mean, look, come on, the guys. You know, when Trump was doing his, is that the break coming up?
Yes, there is a break coming up. You're a pro at this. Come on now.
Oh.
Anyway, folks, hang tight. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. And we're back. You're listening to Quantum Connections with Luckee and Star, and our special guest today, enjoying a cup of coffee, is Charles Frith from charlesfrithblogspot.com. And I am excited and happy to have him on our show, and I think we have a new friend here, and I hope he agrees to come back again in the future. That would be nice. Charles, we were talking. Wait a minute. What were we talking about before the break? Oh gosh,
we were talking about Trump, and I was just going to say, look,
yes,
you know, Trump's this guy, right? Which I don't have a television. I do in my new place, but I don't switch it on. It came with the joint.
Right.
Look, Trump's this guy that all I knew was he was this brash, vulgar billionaire, which is instant turn off for me anyway, because I quite like sophisticated, you know, intellectual people, and which is, you know, not necessarily a wrong thing. You know, we need brash, vulgar people now and again. And also he did this Apprentice show, which is like just the lowest consciousness kind of entertainment I can think of. So when I realized he was running for president, it was like, well, this guy's a douchebag in the sort of friendly sense of the term, right? Right. But I know an awful lot about. I used to be a big Clinton fan when I was, when I was not woke, as they say, and it was only like studying the Clintons and their drug running with the CIA and their close ties to the Bush family. Basically, they're protégés of the Bush. They're the controlled dialectic. So I mean, there was just no choice. How could you possibly, for me, I sort of tend to lean towards. I don't want to call it collectivist principles, but principles of union. We're all in this together. Shared endeavour, I think, is a better expression. But anyway, now he's in charge. I have no loyalty to the guy. I mean, like, you know what? If he does something that I agree with, great. I'm going to say, you know what? I like this. If he does something I don't agree with, well, I'm going to say so. Basically, he's hired the neocon dream team, hasn't he? So let's expect more war. There's just no way that Trump's going to get out of it. Because, one, he's not smart enough. I mean, like, he knows a lot, but he doesn't know everything. Or he doesn't know 10% of what a good conspiracy researcher knows.
Exactly. I wonder that's why we're concerned. We're really worried about this guy because he knows enough to be dangerous.
Right, but I mean, look, one of the things that I often find interesting about American psychology is, particularly amongst our sort of like, our community word sounds a bit overused, but in our group, in our gang, is that we know that it's fundamentally rotten right through in terms of structure and organization. And, it's the pyramid. It runs from the top down, which is why, every police chief, every general can be told what to do. Either they're an order taker or else they're blackmailed or pressured or whatever. And so for me, I find it interesting when people accept that there's a great sickness in our world, and yet suddenly become defensive if an outside force threatens it. It's like, well, actually, I'm sort of interested in seeing the system change, and in order for it to change, it will have to look like some kind of reality framework that I had never anticipated before. And so what I can say is, like, let's try and embrace a little bit of change, even though there will be a cost with it. Hopefully, let's try and steer it around the cost of lives. That's why the alien invasion one is the best one, because it's relatively low in terms of genocide, right? Like, you know, unite us all together, put us into some sort of collectivist mood whereby we're all fighting the aliens. Obviously, it's a scam, or else it's a scam. Yeah. It's a scam sponsored by the aliens.
Sponsored by the aliens.
I love the alien thing, because, it's always like what any rational person would have to factor in outside players. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying that it's an interesting dynamic. Anyway. Let's next question. Otherwise, I'll start rattling on aliens.
Well, you know what's interesting is that the alien card is the last card. But who am I thinking of? The
Illuminati game.
Well, the Illuminati game, but it goes back further than that.
Carol Rousing or Caroline Rousing or something like that. She worked for. She worked for the head of the rocket program at NASA. Now, again, that could be disinfo. But look, basically, he told her, right, that the last card would be the alien card. Well, presumably he told her to stop it. And so if it's worked, it won't happen, right?
Great. Yes. Anyway, move on.
Anyway,
throw that in there.
Blue beams are kind of fun way of getting around these things. The only thing that we have to manage is that we all have to be in it together, all for one for all. But at the same time, nobody at the top telling everybody what to do.
Right. Absolutely.
And
that has to stop. Let us have our own true independence. And that doesn't mean freedom. Freedom does not mean no responsibility. Not at all. That's where the people get confused, is they think, well, let me do what I want, man. Well, there's going to be problems with some of the things that you want to do. If you sit there and smoke all day long and don't go to work and things like that, you're not going to have money for food or have any form of exchange for food and things like that, and you'll be hungry. So what are you going to do then?
I mean, we're obliged to provide value. Otherwise, if we don't provide value, then, unless we just want to pick fruits and, sit by the beach, which, I have done, and keep yourself alive.
It's about still providing with the community and being part of the community, and as opposed to being part of the corporate and providing for the corporate. So to do your own thing and be sovereign and be independent and be responsible for self means being responsible for self as the whole. Instead of somebody telling you what to do, you're self-responsible, and you understand that in order to receive, you've got to give. And that is how that freedom and doing what you want works.
I think respect for self is respect for others,
Yes.
It's the same thing, really. And we try and divide it into, this is good for me, therefore, and that's good for others. No, if it's good, it's that Indian expression, isn't it? If it's bad for one person, it's bad for all of us in a way.
Right. And again, the responsibility is within ourselves. And when we take responsibility, that is when we are free. When we take responsibility for our own, and then we can help others and ourselves. And so the thing, this thing with our new year. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Charles.
No, it's okay. You're absolutely right. I think you're right. I mean, let's drill into that. I mean, taking responsibility for ourselves. I think I'm an expert in not taking responsibility for myself, and so therefore I can talk authoritatively that it's only as I take more responsibility for myself and my actions that I've grown as a person.
Exactly.
Right on. Beautifully put.
And then we grow as a whole, because the more we are.
That's right. That's right. Collectively growing is a good thing as well.
Well, wow, that was pretty well put.
If anybody wants to sign up for my cult, I'm issuing subscriptions at $15 a month. You can pay me by PayPal or credit card.
There you go. See, and you can go to charlesfrithblogspot.com and contact me there. If you
wait, I wanted a cult. Oh my God! No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. I don't want that. People say, "Well, you're a natural leader." No, don't you put that on me. Don't put that on me.
I'm directionally challenged. Do not follow me.
Yeah. I'm the same. I don't want followers. I enjoy people who share my stuff, because it means that it's vibrating with them. But that's it. That once once we agree on something, that's our connection. That's all that it has to be. We agree. That's great. Woof, no more.
Exactly. And, now I'm feeling a huge change is coming this year. Now, for instance, stock markets and all this stuff, all this vitriol is going to come out because we know that the stock market, they're going to tank it. They're going to either tank that or they're going to raise the interest rates, and the Fed is going to raise the interest rates, and everybody's going to blame Trump for all this problem. But
we've always blamed others for our problems, haven't we? Instead of owning our problems.
Exactly. But the thing is, and failing to realize that all this time it's been artificially held down. The interest rates have been artificially held down in respect to the Trump or the Obama administration. And then what they're going to do is they're going to release it, and that thing's going to spring, and people are going to be screaming about it. And
well, if we can get off the Federal Reserve and return back to our U.S. Treasury, we cut out a whole lot of usury, a.k.a. sin, to the Bible, and debt. Right. Because so if we get away from the Federal Reserve, that we're paying them to print our money, and then they
loan it to us at interest.
Yeah, it's just stupid. So, when we return to our Treasury and get rid of the Fed, then that's a whole other story.
That's the thing, too. It's like, because it is inextricably tied to Israel. If you notice how much money is sent to Israel, that's something that really gets under my craw right now.
The Federal Reserve is the linchpin to all war, because if we look at the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, 6 months later, the Federal Reserve was, 6 months prior to that, the Federal Reserve was established. So, if that's a coincidence, fine. But we also know that banks fund the wars, and that has to look. Is it really so hard to say that something should be illegal? Is it really so hard to say that nobody should profit from war? Of course not. We're post-war anyway. What we're really about now is regional conflicts and arguing over. Well, over the crumbs of food that they give us compared to the gargantuan feasting tables that the big boys are chomping down on.
Exactly. People are crying and complaining about welfare recipients or people on food stamps. Meanwhile, we're giving billions to other countries.
Obviously, it's not a good system whereby people are reliant on food stamps, but there's no way that any system should suddenly put, 5 or 6 million people on food stamps out onto the street, because then it's just wrong. So, we have to find a middle way navigating through these polarized dialectics. We can pick and choose. Yeah, we'll have this system for another 5 years, or we'll get rid of that tomorrow, or we got rid of that yesterday, it's not working, quick, bring it back. Look, come on. This is one of the things that I'm always sort of thinking about. We don't have to be attached to any ideology. We can be attached to the ideology of it works or it's working, and that's it. That's why I've always said that. I'm fully behind many of the socialist principles of shared burden, but also I'm behind the capitalist principles of wealth creation is a good thing. Without wealth creation, you and I would not be talking on the internet.
Right. And the technology, I mean, we all need to pursue our own interests and that which makes us passionate. And for those who are programmers, program. For those who are into clean energy, develop your stuff and stop the powers that want to be from stopping these people from doing that thing. There are so many regulations and rules, and this is across all of the nations, that stop and inhibit any good inventions. And that's got to stop. We've got to come out for these underdogs and promote them.
It's interesting, isn't it, really? Because I always sort of wonder, okay, so what would paradise be? What would it be like, And I am firmly convinced that there would be death and suffering and sickness and, and pain and sorrow in any decent paradise. All I'm asking for is, does it have to be so extreme? No, it doesn't, okay? Do we have to have such extreme rich? No. Do we have to have extreme poor? No. Do we have to have, people who are starving in one country and, and obese in other countries. No, we can level the playing field on those things. But will there be death? Will there be suffering? Will there be,
the poor?
Let's call it personal conflicts? Like one of the things that I always recall about primates, the study of primates, is that when they fight quickly, viciously, but then it's all over all of a sudden. So it's literally a 5-second fight. And then both parties walk away with a sort of like, I wonder why that happened, or how did that sort of come about, and the lessons learned from it. Well, that's the sort of future that I imagine, which is that, we really don't need any more of this industrialized killing. And also this bullshit media as well. I mean, it's just, we're living in brilliant times for the media, but can you imagine it? The president of the United States calls CNN fake news. Right? And you know what? Donny Tiny Hands, that's another guy that you should be checking out on Jimmy Dore on YouTube. He's just great. I mean, he doesn't get all the conspiracy stuff, but he knows how to call out right and wrong. And he calls Donald Trump Donny Tiny Hands, which is what that Marco Rubio called him in the debates. So obviously Rubio knows a little something about Donny. And but anyway, for Donny Tiny Hands to be calling out CNN as fake news, I mean, come on. Well, 2017 is a big year. Well, 2016 was a corker.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
You were mentioning earlier that banks fund the wars, and I think it's actually opposite that. The wars are funding the banks. And the capitalism works as long as those at the top don't hoard the money. If they're putting it back into the economy properly and returning it, then the cycle does work and work in a healthy manner. But when we've got so much of the money being funneled up into the wealthy, the elite, the big corporations, and then it's going elsewhere and not coming back into the country and back to the people, that's why we have the problem. It's not being put back into the cycle for further production and further growth. It's getting shipped elsewhere, and we're the ones having to pay for everything, and we're getting left broke. That's how it's broken.
Yeah, I agree. It's first of all, okay, central banking is 1,000% profit straight up. You put down $100, you get $1,000 back, right? So that's the initial profit scam of fractional reserve banking. And then after you've made your $900, you're like, well, who am I going to lend this to? Well, the warmongers, because it's more profitable, right? So you're right. The wars do fund the banks, but the essence of banking is completely wrong. Usury, yes. I think, as you called it, which is quite right. And as I understand it, usury back in the Middle Ages, when we were building the cathedrals, was considered so sinful and so harmful to people that even the average
Bible
peasant
calls it sin.
That's right. And, the peasant in the field understood that if somebody could lend money, particularly at fractional reserve, multiplying their initial wealth by 10 times and then lending it out at usurious interest rates. Well, even the guy in the field knew that was just a license to print money or a license to print evil. But nowadays, we all just take it as, that's the way the system works. And I speak to, Hong Kong's a great financial center. And occasionally I'll meet someone who's like, switched on or plugged into the system at very high levels. And these guys, right, they might know the most complex trading mechanisms and profit models and technologies, algorithmic high-speed trading. But then when I ask them where does money come from, they don't even know the basics, fractional reserve banking and all that good stuff. So, it just says you can be really smart and be clueless, right?
Right.
For those that don't know, fractional reserve banking means that somebody can deposit $1,000 into the bank, and the bank can then loan out $9,000 or $10,000 with interest to other people. And so the bank doesn't have the money to loan out. It's loan out on paper. And also, usually there's two pieces of paper to sign. One, it says, yes, I'm giving you permission to create this money out of thin air. And then the second one is, yes, I promise to pay you back what I just allowed you to create out of thin air and using my name. And I'm going to have to pay you interest.
Exactly.
It's fraud. It's fraud from the get-go, and it's legal fraud because I wrote it into law.
Exactly. And isn't it funny that anybody any private citizen who endeavors to loan money out at a rate of interest, for not saying about fractional lending, nothing like that. What they're doing is they're taking, say they loan their buddy $1,500 and they charge interest on it. Did you know that that's called embezzlement?
Bingo.
Yeah.
A borrower nor a lender be.
It's called embezzlement, and that person will go to jail. Okay.
Yeah, and also,
now the banks can do it, no problem.
Go on. Yeah, and also back in the day, it was known that I think going back to Babylon, that every 7 years you needed a debt jubilee to clean the system out. I.e., people who hadn't managed to pay back their debts and hadn't made money. Well, they're never going to do it anyway. So let's just level the playing field. And the ones that got wealthy, they got wealthy. Great, keep on going. And the ones that didn't, well, okay, you didn't do so good last time, and maybe we won't be so trusting with you in the future. But at least you had a try, and you can get back to being a productive unit of humanity. So, debt jubilees were considered, not just considered, but were provably a good thing.
Yeah. In the Jewish calendar, this year is Jubilee year. This year, 5777 in the Jewish calendar is Jubilee year. So.
Right. The Jewish have the every 50 years, whereas the ancient Babylons had it for every 7 years. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is the year of Jubilee for the Jewish religion.
Yeah, well, good. I'm all for that. If 2017 was a Jubilee year, particularly for the college students who've kind of like been indoctrinated into a career that probably isn't. Well, we know that the millennials aren't happy at work. They're like, I've been told I'm special all my life, and now I'm by my parents. Really, it's bad parenting to tell someone they're special. It's exceptionalism, isn't it? It's the American thing, which is just produces wrong. And so we've got these young kids that are, trapped in careers that aren't really going to send them anywhere, and burdened with massive debt. They've, basically, in a way, they've also been quite powerful, because those were the guys that were going for Bernie. Now, I knew Bernie was never going to cut the mustard, and he threw the towel in with Hillary at the end, which was disgusting. But
did you not see that gash on his cheek?
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? I would say it's a little bit more than that. I would say, look, here, Bernie, here's the photos we've got of you, and him going like, "Fuck you, I'm a socialist, I don't care," and they're like, "Bosh," and we'll also give you some if you cause any trouble, and then he backed down.
Yeah,
how did he ever get into that situation where he was, even endorsing someone who's basically, the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Compromised. If he had to play along with the big boys up there, then he had to compromise.
I think he must be compromised at some level, because, I'm not saying he's a bad guy 100%. That's the thing about Bernie. He seemed to be, I liked him, he seemed to be authentic and railing against the system.
Mm-hmm. And that's why he had such a great following. And the betrayal of the people that was supporting him. Wow. I mean, he hurt them deeply, because they saw the system was working. They were going to have their Bernie, and guess what? And Hillary took and stole that thing. And he went ahead and said, I agree or concede to the selection of Hillary Clinton. At least he was smart enough to say the word selection rather than election. Yeah. He was smart enough on that. Now, listen, in the last 4 minutes we've got here, I wanted to see if you had any parting thoughts for our audience.
Oh, no, I've got nothing. I've just been enjoying talking to you.
I've been enjoying this too. It's like a regular conversation, really cool one, but regular wouldn't hold the same.
I suppose I'm more interested in learning, because you said that the Babylonian system was 50-year debt jubilee, and the Jewish debt jubilee was 7 years. That was quite fascinating. Vice versa. Okay, I got it the wrong way around. Yeah, the
Jewish calendar doesn't coincide with the Gregorian calendar that we're under. So it started, I want to say, October. So
why was the Gregorian calendar introduced? I know there were some discrepancies, but it seems like there was a much more nefarious reason for it.
To get us on the base 12 instead of the base 10, I do believe. Weird little side note, you talk about the six-finger giants and Anunnaki, and if you go down that path, they were the rulers, and so there was the base 12. I've kind of thought this on my own. So we've got a base 12 system here in America and a few other places, where the rest of the places have gone decimal, base 10 system. It's a little interesting side note there that I have found interesting.
There's definitely something about the whole base system, and also 360 degrees, which is base 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's more hexadecimal. Excuse me, that's hexadecimal.
Yeah. I'm not super knowledgeable on this, but it does appear that that some kind of thinking with more than 10 digits was around running things at some point. Yeah.
Exactly.
And where did they go, you know? I mean, come on. I mean, who knows?
The genetics are still there because my dad tells me I had a Grady at the head, 6 fingers on each hand.
Really? So you're Anunnaki?
Yeah, well, I question a lot of things about my life, but yeah, I mean,
did somebody say Star was a goddess?
Probably Steph.
You're a goddess.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically in this conversation, we've basically boiled it down to who's the real problem here. It's basically the banking system and the Federal Reserve and those like it. You know, we've got the IMF and the World Bank, and now we've got BRICS. Ooh, fun. And
but BRICS, right? Did it ever occur to you perhaps that the name BRICS sounds very Masonic?
No stuff, huh? That wasn't lost on me either.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you know, that would be the next controlled dialectic for for globalization, wouldn't it? Oh, it's the BRICS versus the Americans. But it seems like it's all. Do you know what? I'm just not convinced that any model is sort of starting to fit in now. It looks basically like they're in panic mode and that they're throwing as much shit at us as possible. And the only people who are buying it are corporate media consumers.
Precisely. And those of us who do research have to sit there and try to tell our side of it, or not our side of it, but tell the truth of it. And we are being assaulted by so many other things. Man, I'll tell you what, you've got the troll. You've rolled a 20 on the trolls, man. I'll tell you what. Jeez, man. You have really got the trolls on you, man. I don't get trolled so often. I mean, just a couple of times here and there. But we've only got a few seconds here before the end of our broadcast, and I want everybody to stay tuned because we've got Kev Baker on coming up next, and he is going to be covering how they're trying to kill the alternative media in the UK, and then he's going to go into this good space room for y'all, for the Wookiees out there. We will see you on Tuesday, and I want to say thank you very much.